Now, the next major piece that we're going to take a look at, we've actually taken a look at before, and that is the function. But this time, I'd like to take a closer look and see what we're working with functions. The functions that we've called already, the alert function and the write function, were both written by somebody else. And that's the beauty of it. We don't have to write what those are going to do, we simply have to call them. Having said that though, I still think that the best way to understand what a function's doing is to write one yourself. So the next thing we're going to do is write a simple function to see how all those parts work. Let me add just a little bit of space down here at the bottom of my script tag so we can add the code for our function. And that tells the script that what's coming up is going to be a function. The next thing we need to add is we need to give our function a name. Now, I want to talk a little bit about naming conventions used in JavaScript because there are a few rules we need to understand, and these rules are going to work for just about everything you name, including variables. The first rule is that you should create a name that doesn't have any strange characters in it, and that includes spaces. So I was going to name my function test function. So I'll write it like this. I'll write the word test, and I don't want to have a space in my name, so I'm just going to use a capital F and spell the word function. Now, the other thing I wanted to tell you is that our names are all case sensitive. So if I use a capital F and a lowercase t at the beginning of this one, I'll have to spell this function exactly the same way when I call it. Now, I mentioned before when we were calling functions that functions usually have parentheses after them. So I'm going to add that to our function. I'll just add in an open and close parentheses for the function. And next, we're going to follow our function with whatever lines of code we want executed when this function's called. Of course, we're going to need something to group those lines of code together, and for that, we use braces. I'll add an open brace up here at the top of the function, and then I'll go down about 2 more lines and add a close brace. I always like to do that when writing functions so I don't forget to close it at the end. Now we've got what looks like a function. Of course, we need our function to do something, so let's just try out a little alert so we can see it working. I'll call our alert function, which is just alert. We'll use parentheses again. And remember, our alert function needs a message to pop into the box, so I'll add in one that says, this alert was created by a function. I've got that in quotes because I want that exactly to appear inside my alert box. And I'll just close the parentheses on my alert function call. I'll use a semicolon to end the line. And now we have a correctly defined function. Notice there's no semicolons on the line where we define the function name or where we end the function. Those are going to be special, but everything inside the function is going to be a normal JavaScript statement, and most of those will probably need semicolons at the end. Well, now that we've created a function, let's try it out. I'm going to save my changes to the page. I'll go back up to my browser, and we'll hit a refresh. And I don't see any changes, and worse, I don't see any alert box. Well, that's because we created a function, but we never called it. So let's try adding a statement that will call our function. We can put it anywhere inside this script block. So I'll put it right below the document write statement and right above the function that we just made. We call it by name just like any other function. So I'll write test function. We'll put the parentheses after it and make it a normal statement. And this one line will now call this function and execute whatever is inside of it. Now let's save our changes. This time, when I refresh the page, I get an alert that was created by a function. Now, there's really only one more thing left to look at as far as making your own functions. So let's go back to our document. And what I'd like to talk about are these parentheses right here. You'll notice when we call the function, we have parentheses. And when we wrote the function, we set up parentheses. These parentheses are there to be able to contain any possible values that you need to give the function in order for it to do its job. So let's do an example where we're actually passing a value from the call of the function into the function itself. The way we set this up, we've got an alert that puts our message right in the alert box. What I'd like to do next is I'd like to actually pass the message in that we're calling from the function. And for that, we're going to be using the parentheses. First, we'll modify the function itself. I'm going to add a variable into the parentheses for the function to catch whatever we send into it. In this case, I'll just call it message. When we call our alert function, we're just going to send it this message, so I'll take the area inside where we have our old message, including the quotes, and I'll simply replace that with our variable. Now at this point, you might wonder where the value for message is going to come from. Well, that's going to come from our test function call. So what we'll do up here is we'll add into the parentheses the value that we want message to be equal to when we set the alert. I'll just make this some text like test message 2. Now I've got that in quotes as well, and you notice I've used single quotes this time. You can actually use either single quotes or double quotes, pretty much whatever you want in these cases, but just make sure you're consistent. Now we're calling the test function, but this time what's different is we're passing it a value, and it will take this value, insert it into message, and inside the function it will use that value wherever we tell it to, in this case the alert function. So let's go test this out. I'll save my page. We'll go back out and refresh the browser again, and this time you can see test message 2. But this one is being passed in from outside the function instead of being inside of it.